Welcome to the Masters in Motion podcast, where we empower Masters athletes to reach their full potential. Join us as we delve into the world of CrossFit and showcase the strength, resilience, and determination of Masters athletes, because we love this sport. I'm JASONGRUBB. I'm here with Rick Stevenson. Rick, how are you doing today?
Doing really well for a Saturday evening.
Are you still sore 1 week after quarterfinals? Are you cleared up?
I'm now sore from the training, so let's put it that way. It took me a few days to start to feel right, but we jumped back in and got back to work because we know the clock is ticking, and there aren't many days left before we start it all up again.
Not at all. Speaking of that, I was just talking with a friend today. I had a lighter week of training this week. I took Monday, Tuesday off. Wednesday, I did some movement, and I realized very quickly on Wednesday that my central nervous system and my brain was not ready to hurt yet. So I did try to push the gas pedal a bit, and I got some resistance on it. So I tried to stay, 80, 90, or 8 to 9 RPE. Thursday, I did some zone 2. Yesterday, I went ahead and went full send on a workout, but it still wasn't quite a full training day for me. Today, full send on one workout, a little accessory work. I know that next week, the following week will be full training sessions for me, but it took me a little bit of easing back in the water after this past weekend. And I feel okay about that, especially knowing that Monday is going to be, right back into the deep end. Right. How was your week? What was your week like?
It was actually, the longer I sit, sometimes the worse I feel. I don't know if others are like that. And I sit for day jobs, so I have that tendency. And that's why Monday, I just wanted to move, biking and walking, just to get the blood flowing a little bit. And then Tuesday was a little bit more movement. And Wednesday, I've worked with Coach, and we've had he's put together a nice plan that takes us right up through to semifinals. So Wednesday was a get back into it. And I think I caught you off guard yesterday when I said I was headed back for session 2. And I think you responded with a couple of question marks or things like that. So even I was getting back into it the body feels good where I think, I need to push a little bit. And certainly on days where the work is there in things that I think we might see, it's also the practice of just shutting your mind off and doing what's in front of you at a sustainable pace, because that's what it's going to take when the camera's rolling for semis.
Yeah. You did catch me off guard. It was yesterday. You said you were heading in for your second session, and I was mustering up the energy to hit my first session, or to even drive to go do my first session.
That doesn't happen very often, folks, believe me.
No,
that doesn't happen very often.
When I am out of rhythm, so my typical rhythm is 2 sessions or 1 mega session every day. It's I do, and we're going to talk about this later in our podcast here about how to deal with this work-life balance, but I often am trying to build my day around my training, and my work revolves around that. But when I'm in the zone, I am doing 2 sessions or that mega session, and it's just a rhythm. There's a rhythm to it. And so when I have a deload week, or a week where I'm really recovering, I absolutely, and I know what you're saying, I feel out of sorts. I feel disorganized. Mm-hmm. The busier I am, the more organized I am. The less busy I am, the more chaotic it feels. Things are just not in the flow right now. And that's what this week has been like. So with that, I am looking forward to getting back to normal Monday. And then, in 3 weeks, we're going to be right in the middle of this thing again, and selling our souls to try to get to the game.
Absolutely.
Which with excitement. So news and updates this week. I know we had a big shakeup in the individual category with Ricky Gerard.
Right. Jumping while he was mountain biking, fell on his shoulder. And I think everybody's out there by now has seen the posts or listened to him on his YouTube channel. Or there was a pretty long interview on Talking Elite Fitness. This is who he is, and this will come up with something that you and I want to talk about a little bit later. But his coach, I think Justin Kotler, was obviously a little disappointed. But to pull Ricky back from what he enjoys doing, regardless of the time of the season, it's unfortunate. It's I think I heard him say it's a full 6 months. Really, in that 4 to 6 month window is when he'll be cleared if he follows everything and it responds well to treatment. He'll begin to be able to put weight overhead in any serious amount. So he said it didn't take him long. He was back in the gym working on his legs not long thereafter, but it certainly knocks him out. And again, like the women's side that had so many familiar names missing this year of the athletes you think will qualify for Madison. Suddenly, with this unexpected big shakeup on the men's side, the men's podium, leaderboard, you name it, could look very different as a result of Ricky's injury.
Right. We've got a podium athlete that's out, and I imagine there's individuals chomping at the bit. You've got Jeffrey Adler, who seems so primed for this year. Yeah. And then the, old school solid Justin Medeiros. These aren't old school, but we've got the expected Justin Medeiros crushing it. Roman Krennikov, who I get to see training multiple times a week over at Mayhem, he is beyond out of this world strong and disciplined. Valender Fikowski, Gudmundsson. There's that whole top 10 is just there's that podium without Ricky is, I think, up for grabs. It's very interesting, and I'll tell you a funny thing that I had happened to me maybe 2 weeks ago on a Monday. It was my first day traveling back to Mayhem. So I'm going to be doing quarterfinals and semifinals in Cookeville at Mayhem, just because it's a familiar place. It's I'm among friends. It's a great place to do these qualifiers. But 2 weeks ago, I was getting ready to work out. It was maybe 1 p.m, and Rich Froning was walking by. He's like, "Hey, Jason, I'm going mountain biking. I do this every Tuesday." I guess it was a Tuesday. Every Tuesday I go mountain biking. He's like, "You want to join? I think we got an extra bike." And I was like, that is a tricky question right there. So one, if Rich Froning invites you to do something, you want to say yes to everything, whatever it is. I want to be able to say yes. Thankfully, he did not have this said bike available. It was loaned out to somebody, and he said, next time we'll get the bike and we can go out. And I was like, yeah, totally. But the reality is I did not want to go mountain biking. Rich is an athlete, and Rich is going to do things that aren't super safe, that might be a little bit dangerous, because he is a young guy, and he's just going to go for it. He's young, he's 35, but he's just going to go for it. I am not that guy. I'm 47. I've never been mountain biking officially, and I'm a klutz. Like, I wear shoes around the house so that I don't break a toe. I am very careful to not put myself in a position that could take me out, and I just feel like, Rich, I appreciate the invite, man, but me on a mountain bike in Cookeville 2 weeks before quarterfinals is probably
a good idea.
Not at all, man.
Glad there was no bike available.
Me too. I would have had to actually make a really tough decision, but thankfully there was no bike. And then after the fact, maybe 2 or 3 days later, I told him, I was like, man, I'm so glad there wasn't a bike. I'm just way too clumsy and would definitely hurt myself. So Ricky's out. I know another part of the news that you and I have been paying attention. I know that I check it daily, but the leaderboard for us is definitely still liquid, if for lack of better words. It is moving and shaking up, right? You've had 2 scores validated so far. Is that correct?
At the time of this recording, it's 2 emails received back. There have been both you and I have seen posts from men that we know in the thick of it in different age categories say like it's official or I'm cleared on all 4. So the HQ is certainly moving at different speeds, and I think just because we haven't received emails back doesn't mean we won't, or doesn't mean that they might find something in our videos. But every day, and I have a buddy I go back and forth with now. We're keeping track of our points because they're switching every day. And it's not scores that they're changing on us. It's just the shifting of the leaderboard around us. And we're like, whoa, I didn't see that coming. And then you have to go roll back and go, okay, who moved where? Unless you take a screenshot every day, it's very hard to keep track of.
And I'm the same way. I'm looking, I've got 40 points, I've got 42 points, I've got 37 points right now. There's definitely movement happening. And yeah, like you said, there've been, I actually, a friend of mine sent me an email today that he received a slight adjustment on one of the first 2 workouts just within the last day. And I know you and I had those workouts cleared earlier in the week. So there is from the outside, there's no predicting when this is really going to be done until the deadline, which is
Right.
April 14th. Is that next
That's
Friday?
next
Is that
Friday.
correct?
Yep.
It's nerve-wracking. I'll tell you, there's those individuals, males and females, that are hanging out around the cut line. I know they've just got to be sitting on pins and needles every day, as they might bounce down to 20, 29, they might bounce up to 31. It's to be expected to allow enough time for video review. And I would say that I appreciate the fact that the leaderboard is moving. I appreciate the fact that videos are being seen. I know that there's been athletes in my category that, they actually had some no reps when they didn't touch the pad on their GHD. And that shows me some meticulous viewing of these workouts. I mean, it's hard to go through this many individuals, this many AMRAPs, who knows how many shuttle runs, if they're actually going to be able to count that, but to actually have eyeballs on that, catching those little things. I know that for me, on my first set of GHD sit-ups, I forgot to touch the pads, so I had to do 10. My judge, told me, he was like, hey, no rep, and I was already on the second rep, so I started my reps on my second rep, and 3 or 4 rounds later, I forgot to touch the pads again, and I did 10. And even with that, it was blatant that I didn't touch the pads, but I ended up doing 10, which tells me that, I had that workout cleared. HQ is watching that and probably counting to make sure that on the set that I missed, I actually did 10 reps, not just 9,
right.
which is just wild. I appreciate that level of
scrutiny.
I don't know. Scrutiny is the right word. Right.
It's very difficult. And I think when we talked to Adrian a while back in our desire, obviously all folks would like to compete in person, but it's tough because in a live competition, if a judge gives you a no rep for, say, squat depth, you can make that adjustment in real time.
Yes.
And now you've done the work, you've submitted the video, and you hope that your judge that you have in real time at your affiliate is holding you to those standards. But the individuals and their pages and pages of infractions shows that maybe the judges weren't all doing that. But sometimes it's almost too late. You've done the work, you've submitted it, and then you get knocked so far back that there's no coming back from. Where in a live competition, those kind of adjustments, as I said, could be made on the fly. And I just think that's the beneficial part of live competition. And I think everybody likes to be live as opposed to, virtual.
Yeah. And a piece of advice based on that, I know that historically I've had a lot of control over the environment around my qualifier. It's been in my gym with a judge I'm familiar with, and that we've always been very clear about the communication with me and my judge, that if I have a no rep, I need them to call it. Like there's absolutely no benefit to me in any way for them to give me a rep that they don't think is a rep. On the wall balls, last year during semifinals, we had to throw to an 11-foot target, and I know repped a few of those, and I got no reps in person, so I did. Instead of the requisite 25, I probably did 20, 28 or 29, maybe even 30 wall balls on the first set because of the nerves. But my judge was accurate. The quarterfinals last year, my judge was dead on it on my toes to bar. I think we had toes to bar and dumbbell snatch. I didn't touch my toes on one of the toes to bar. One of my toes didn't touch. And there's no way the camera could even maybe see that. And he gave me the no rep. And I think regardless of the environment that we're in, there has to be a communication with your judge and almost an encouragement to your judge. No one wants to give a friend a no rep, or no one wants to give anyone a no. But if you are judging someone for a quarterfinal or a semifinal, or you're asking someone to judge you, just tell them, if you see it, if I don't step across that line, if I'm not standing up fully, if I don't touch my toes to the bar, if my chest doesn't touch, if I'm not locked out, give me the no rep so I can correct the movement in person. But I think that really has to be one, I know that I'm always so appreciative of somebody taking their time out to judge me that I don't want to be a burden to them. So really, just thank you so much for counting. But that's not their job. Their job isn't to count. They didn't take the judge's course to count our reps. They took the judge's course to give us good
and
reps.
Hold you to the standards that are laid out there. Yeah, I mean, and you
Yep.
hope that it's not such a fragile relationship that somebody no reps you, and then that causes a
Precisely.
rift between you and the judge. That's not what this is about.
Yep.
Yes, it's a sport. Yes,
Yep.
yes, ourselves and the men and women in the Masters take this seriously. If you're competing at this level, you do it out of because you enjoy it. But it shouldn't come down to where the judge is afraid to say something because they're afraid of upsetting you, where it's competition and you need that in order to become better. It's
Yes.
pretty plain and simple.
100%.
Yep.
I mean, I think every time new workouts are released, the video of Dan Bailey and Pat Sherwood doing bro reps, that should be released every time.
Yeah.
Everyone should have to watch that as part of the judges' course because it's one of the best parody videos of all time. Those are beautiful reps, but those aren't power cleans.
Was that Danny Broflex?
Yeah, it was Danny Broflex. That's what it was.
God, they need to roll those back up.
It was so good, and it'd be really good if they did some remakes because we're like 10 years down the road, and those guys are 10 years older.
Pat and understated way of those aren't power clips. What are you doing?
So understated. And I am. I'll tell you what's fun at Mayhem at the end of the month when we do semifinals. I think Dan Bailey is coming to town, so that will be that'll be a horse for me to chase.
I heard that from Rich.
That'll be a good one.
Yeah, on a pod, he's trying to get Dan and Easy Muhammad back. He said, "Bring the band back together." Yeah.
I mean, that'd be amazing. And they're 10 years younger than me, so it's not they're not the best horses to chase because they're a little too fast. But if Dan takes it easy, I'll just Dan, go like 80%, bro, and we'll see if we can.
I bet you he doesn't have that motor, that gear in his in his repertoire.
Let's see. I don't know, man. Those guys are such legends.
Yep.
The thought or the topic of today's podcast that you and I were brainstorming as we were thinking about getting through quarterfinals, and I know that you have some things coming up this week. I'm working through, I've got lots of different irons in the fire all at one time, working on a dozen things. It made us sort of think about this important topic for Masters athletes in particular. And I know that I get this question all the time. How do we balance training with the demands of life? How do we prioritize and make those types of decisions with our family obligations, our work and those obligations, as well as our training, which if we're aiming to be high level competitors is a huge time management issue right there. How do we stay consistent with training while balancing and juggling all of these, managing family, work, and a social life, which I don't even know what that is. But I just want to open that up for our discussion because I think it's you and I come from very different occupations. I thought it would be fun to share how each one of us manages training. We're both games athletes. We've both been there. We've both stood on the podium, but we come from very different stages of life and stages of work. So let's share how we manage this. So I'm going to toss it to you.
Okay.
Tell us about, Rick, I'm not sure if everyone knows kind of like, what you do, what your background is, that I know all about what you do for work, but share with us a bit about how you manage this.
Sure. I think the way you and I kind of had some ideas that we tossed around to start. One of the first, topics that we wanted to talk about was time management and prioritization. And I'll back up by saying, yes, I've worked for a bank, an investment manager before that, in the fixed income side for a number of years. That's my career. That's what I've done. The stresses of the great financial crisis back in 2008, 2009 actually led me back into the gym more than I had been prior to that. And thanks to two buddies that were experimenting with CrossFit, they introduced me to the sport. So, that ultimately this sport of mine has become the biggest balancer in my life to take the stresses of work, shut those off and compete and enjoy the fitness journey. But I found, dialing it back here to your first point that we wanted to discuss, was as I've become more competitive over the last 5 or 6 years, I work best with having having a goal out in front of me, whether it's a qualifier or a competition, and then looking at that in the future and pulling it back to what do I have to do between today and said date 3 months in the future. I don't, I'm just, it's not how I'm wired, where I just won't roll from month to month, just kind of aimlessly through, training or just fitness for fun, even though I said I need to do that all the time. I am pretty goal oriented. And so this career that I have is, you call it a 9 to 5. Up until the pandemic, it was always in the office. There's a little bit more work-life balance now, a little more flexibility that I have. But still there's office required time, and you can't just jump from the office into the gym. It just doesn't work that way. It never did before. So I don't want to get too far ahead of what you and I want to talk about, but I'll leave this with you in that in my career now, I have to have goals, and I have to set those goals and work with the people around me, the family, my coach, and folks at the gym to set checkpoints and check-ins along the way.
Yeah, I have had a I've had a different path, and I know that there's a lot of masters athletes that own their gyms. That's something that is probably a decent percentage. A decent percentage, as in probably 10% of the top level masters athletes also run the gym. I would say maybe that's a fair number. That is a guess, but I see a lot of them. But I think that was my background as well. When I started CrossFit, I was a wedding photographer and had my own flexibility. If I were to shoot 15 weddings a year, that was a busy year, and that allowed for some flexibility around being a CrossFitter. And that was just a one class a day type situation at the time. And I was so excited about CrossFit that I decided to open a gym as an exit from wedding photography. And all of a sudden I had my own gym, and that was really exciting. So I could train whenever I wanted to when I wasn't coaching classes at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 9 a.m., noon, 4 p.m., or 5 p.m. And that was a good year of my life right there when I opened my gym, training and doing everything in 2015. And then in 2016, I started building a team. By 2017, I was coaching a handful of classes, but I was still operating a gym. And it's interesting when you own and operate a gym. It's like you think you could just go train whenever you want, but that's not really how it goes. It is the hardest job that's a stretch. It's not the hardest job. It's the hardest job I've ever had, owning and operating a gym. And by 2018, when I qualified for the games, I wasn't teaching classes, but I was still running a gym, but I was probably training 3 hours a day in 1 to 2 sessions, and was balancing that with running the gym. And being a father at the time of 2 older kids and eventually 2 younger kids that are separated by just over 10 years. So really interesting balance there. But I have since then, and I ended up selling my gym in 2019 and moving into the online space, which at least took me out of the need to be at a gym at any given time or those types of obligations, but I still have plenty of tasks to do every day. I can, however, orient my life around my training. So if I want to train from 9 a.m. till noon and then maybe 5 p.m. till 6:30 p.m., I can do that if I want to, because I can build the rest of the things I need to do in my business around that. I don't schedule specific times or meetings at any given times in case I decide, and this is very different. I'm not as regimented. If I want to train from 11 until 1 in the afternoon and then 3 till 4:30 in the afternoon, I can do that too, because I can work in the morning, work a little bit in the afternoon, work a little bit in the evening. So I build a lot of my work time around my gym schedule, which is very different than, your work schedule has a lot of influence on when you train. So it's different. I think, I don't know if it's less stressful because what needs to get done in a day needs to get done in a day. And as an entrepreneur, I go to bed thinking about this. I wake up thinking about this. There's never a moment I'm not thinking about my business, even though I am getting to train whenever I want to.
And again, we ourselves are very different from each other, and that doesn't even take into account all the other careers and professions out there, because by and large, the majority of the masters community, I'd say easily the majority, are still working and not fully retired or anything like that. So you're all, first responders, or I'm not even going to think of a million other professions right now that don't have typical hours. How do you find time to train? When do you find time to train? And you still find a way to make it work if you want to be competitive in the sport and compete at a higher level, it certainly takes more than just an hour a day.
Well, and skipping to the question, we have two sort of ideas to touch on here. One, staying consistent in training while life is going on. But I think the next question we go to, and then we'll come back for staying consistent, is how do you? I know you have older kids,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not all out of the
No.
house, and I know you're very active even with your kids that are in college. So how do you manage family, vacation, work, training, and a social life or a life with your spouse? What's that look like?
When we talked about this, I think one of the things that really came up was finding that balance of where you are in the point of the season that you're in. I think I think the perfect time would be, everybody get away in the late summer before everything kind of kicks into gear again in the fall. But that doesn't always work with high school schedules and what's going on with school and who has to be where. But I look at it that as long as I'm consistent, whether we're out of town, whether we're in town, and I'm healthy and I can still make time to fit training sessions in, it's one or two, depending on what I'm trying to get accomplished during this point, say for in the season. The consistency is the biggest thing. I go crazy if I don't get to the gym or a gym or work out or do something. I think a lot of people can relate to that. It's not easy to just sit around all day and do nothing. And now I'm already sitting for my job. So you compound that without doing something else, it drives you nuts after a while. But it's the where are you in the point of the season? And I've been fortunate that if we are going to get away for a small vacation or something like that, does it mean that I need to look for an affiliate where we're going? Luckily, I haven't had to do any type of AGOQ or qualifier type workouts at other gyms, but I've done my share of open workouts at other gyms around different states just because of when we traveled, and that's a very different time in the career. But if it means having to make the overture to train somewhere else and it's important, I'll do that. And luckily, the family's been very understanding. And again, as the kids are older, they don't need you to be around every minute of the day. So you can find that time even away from home to get some work done. If I rewind this to when they were much, much younger, it was a much bigger balancing act, just trying to fit it all in, and you're away from the home for a vacation, and that's family time. So does it really benefit the family if dad has to go to the gym and train? So it's a delicate balance, but you if you have that relationship with your family, you're able to accomplish kind of both goals. I'll consider yourself lucky.
Yeah, I agree, and I think about that. I think currently where I'm at, I think about having kind of an emotional bank account, right? And that there are times when I'm making big withdrawals from the family emotional bank account where, I might be 2 or 3 days where I'm very busy in my work, very busy in training. Sometimes those collide, and it makes for some really long, challenging days. And I could skip training to spend more time with my family on those days when work is a bit more demanding, or I've set deadlines for myself. But oftentimes I'm imbalanced, and I will make big withdrawals from that emotional bank account that my 9-year-old, 6-year-old, my wife have. And I do try to pay attention to those withdrawals. I also try to be intentional about making deposits. So it's really interesting with a 9 and a 6-year-old and living in an RV, traveling full time, which I'll talk about in a second. But they're 2 boys, and these 2 boys, all they want is to go fishing with me for an hour in the afternoon or 2 hours, or all they want is to go to the bouncy pads that they have at these RV spots that we stay at. They're quite fun and quite dangerous, and you can be incredibly playful, violent with children on these things. It's all these boys want to do is just play as hard as they can, and I give them a good workout. It's a good zone 2 training for me when I'm bouncing on these bouncy pads, throwing 9-year-olds as hard as I can, and sometimes throwing 6-year-olds at 9-year-olds. It's great. If we don't come home with concussions, we did something wrong.
That's balancing.
But That's balancing, and it's just making those little deposits. With kids, they don't need. I mean, they need a lot of my attention, and we have some. Times around Christmas time. We took a good amount of time, and we did some, Universal Studios. We did big days in there. But in an everyday life, a good hour of deposit and playfulness with the kids, it goes a long way. And a consistent date night is something that we do. And we actually did that before we jumped on the podcast here. So I'll say that tonight I had garlic bread and pizza for dinner. And that was dinner number one. Dinner number two is a pound of ground beef a little bit later. But it's Saturday, and it was something we planned to do. I think that's important to make those deposits on a consistent basis, that you just don't miss those, because there will be times like a semifinals weekend or a quarterfinals weekend where you make a significant withdrawal from that account, where you are so engulfed and completely focused on a task like a qualifier.
The blinders are on.
You're making a big withdrawal right there. And you're not in this case, this sounds like my family is generally happy to be a part of that process with me, but it is not it's not time together, playing a board game together is time together, but it is taking a little bit of withdrawal. The bank account starts to decrease, and so we've got a plan for that time to rebuild that account. I'll say this, that last year after the games, which is a very intense process, we worked our way towards the Outer Banks of North Carolina and spent a month on the beach, being able to go out and boogie board in the waves every day. That was a big deposit time, because training for the games is a huge withdrawal time. So there are these seasons where it's very much imbalanced, and then maybe the next season is way more imbalanced in the other direction. So I think that's part of the compromise and part of the challenge that we're working on together with our families, right? And it's just it's not easy.
But it's something as the months go by, and it feels like these deadlines or these goals come at you faster and faster. You're really kind of making these decisions in real time, trying to keep the big picture in mind, like you said. To use your words about managing that bank account in your head, looking at it as a 1 year, how has this last year been? And I think if you're a goal setter, you'll look back on the past year and say, okay, what do I want to accomplish, for this next year, or this next season, if you will, with regards to the sport.
Well, and it's funny that we talk about goal setting, and it's funny the way our brains, even yours and mine, are so similar in some ways and so different. In my mind, I'm setting goals, but the goal is, I have to hold my goal loosely because it's ridiculous. I just want to win. I just want to win. I can't fathom a different goal right now. And I have to be realistic that I'm in the middle of my age category, and it's getting really tough. And these guys are really, really good. And so there's this smaller goal of I just got to get to semifinals healthy, and I've just got to get through that. In the top 10, but ideally with some confidence going into the games. If I get to the games this year, I always season it with, if I don't make it, how will this year look as well? I'm thinking through all of the scenarios, always looking for the silver lining. If for some reason semifinals come and I don't make it, I have a story to tell in there too that has hopefully a silver lining, as much as the silver lining of I qualify and I get to compete in person at the games again. That would be great. But it's a relentless, deep desire to just keep pushing.
Correct. Maybe that's why I started a little bit earlier this week than you did. I've got more points to make than you do.
Well, the quarterfinals is cute, but it doesn't mean anything until it all resets. Yep. It lasts for a day.
We've talked about that with a number of men and women that I keep in touch with. The reset is good and bad. I mean, it's certainly helpful each time, but we've all been through those AGOQs where there was no reset from the open, and that was such a large determinant of your path forward.
Oh, it was the worst. Yep. So, Rick, I guess the question is, year after year, you've been doing this for even longer than me. What what keeps you consistent in your training, or if you were to share some tips to stay consistent, is it the goal setting, or is there some other secret sauce that helps you stay consistent in your training?
It depends how much we want to reveal. No, I'm just kidding. There's no secret sauce. Look, health is such a big priority, and as long as the body's cooperating to a great degree, and you can you have a little bit of success early on, and maybe that's at a local competition or something maybe kind of regional in your area. Drive a state over, and it's a one-day competition where maybe you're even on a team, and you just get that. You don't have to win, but you get on that. It gives you that little taste of success to say, "Oh yeah, we can do this." And if the body cooperates, I just want to plot it out each day, like what I do want to accomplish something every day. And then at the end, I want to feel like each of those little contributions have added up to something bigger. And now that we have not just the game season, but I had a goal. I'd never competed at Wadapalooza up until a couple of years ago. I mean, it was something I'd knocked on a door for quite a few years. And when that qualifier came out back then, it was something that I was able to qualify for, and then have a reasonably successful minus COVID weekend down in Miami. But it's not just all the games. It's whatever maybe other competition. I've always wanted to do a higher end masters team competition, and I was able to do that this past year, and I enjoyed that experience tremendously. And in fact, I wish we had more masters team competitions at those higher levels, because I think more masters see the value in that. But again, for me, it's each day's contribution and what does that add up to. And so I don't think that's any secret sauce. It's staying healthy through that. And as long as I don't miss a step and break another bone in my foot like last year, I'll be good.
Yeah.
But I'm also not hopping on a mountain bike. I'll tell you that much. I'll ride around the neighborhood, but I'm not hopping on a mountain bike right now.
I agree, and I think about being consistent, and that there's a drive to stay healthy, to stay fit. I mean, I think for both of us, there's that a bit of anxiety that comes if we don't move our body, if we don't get sweaty on a given day. I know that my RPMs run really high in general, and by getting a good training session in, I feel so much better afterwards. It's calming. It helps me focus on everything else that I'm doing if I get a good training session in. It's been like that for years.
I can remember, and you're around the folks down there at Mayhem right now, but in that original Froning 4 movie, they were interviewing Rich's wife, Hillary. And she came right out and said, "Oh, Rich, you don't want to be around him if he hasn't worked out." And that just always stuck with me. I'm like, oh, so somebody else is just as crazy about this, as we all are. I mean, it puts you in such a better frame of mind. And I think when I pop my head into the other side of our affiliate with the other members, and they're working hard, and they have that 1 hour of the day that's theirs. They're with their friends. They get a great workout in, and that just sets their day up for success if they're a morning athlete, or it caps it if they're hitting a 4:30 class or a 5:30 class in the afternoon. They're finishing their day on a high note, and I think that is that's the secret sauce to our community as a whole. It just really puts you in a good frame of mind, and that's the whole point of this.
It really does, and I think there's that community aspect, that getting sweaty with other people, that's such a big part of it. And in my mind, I was trying to contrast that with when I train alone. Do I still feel that? And I really do. I do a very good amount of training solo, and I still know that I feel that that carnal sense that I'm accomplishing something, that I'm doing hard work, that I'm it's almost like this is a very maybe this is masculine. I just remember before CrossFit, and I would put in a really solid day of yard work. Man, I'd be just beat up and tired. I'd crack open a cold one and sit on the back deck and look at the work that I had accomplished that day. And there was a reward in the work, right? The work itself was rewarding.
Absolutely.
And I think about, it happens with CrossFit. It happens in my training, whether I'm solo or whether I'm with others, which is more enjoyable. But even if I'm solo, I get done with the day. I look at the whiteboard. I've done everything that I wrote on it. And I think, my work is done and my body feels it. I'm worn out. I'm beat up. I did hard things. I pushed myself. I need a shower. I need all the food. And that is a really gratifying experience. And I think that's something that human beings, men and women, do crave, a sense of accomplishment. And if we can do that on a daily basis, it's just so good for us physically, mentally, probably spiritually. I think it makes us better at everything else that we do in life.
Yeah, and it doesn't necessarily have to be working out, as we know. It's, playing golf, going skiing, going for a hike. Pick up basketball in the neighborhood. I mean, it just doesn't matter what it is. Although I'm not doing pick up basketball right now either. I'm not.
Yeah, I'm terrible at all the other things.
Not on my knees right now. I'll tell you that much.
I know, right? It's 2 weeks before semifinals. I'm not throwing footballs. I'm not playing dodgeball with my kids, and I'm going to be a little more careful on the bouncy thing because I don't want to put myself at risk. At least just until we punch a ticket to the games, then we can get crazy with it. But well, Rick, this was fun. I think it's important for Masters athletes to share about how we all balance our work life. Everyone has their own unique story. And hats off to every single one of our listeners and those that are in the Masters community who build time into their life to do this stuff. One, because they love it. Two, it's good for them, but it's not easy. If it was easy, everyone would do it, or no one would do it. I think just the fact that it's a challenge set forth every day. How am I going to get through this day and figure this out? I love that. I love that, and it's super motivating.
We do it because we love it, and we're not professionals at it, and that's why. I think those questions to Adrian were that way. And I know the community as a whole keeps screaming, hey, Masters are more than 50% of, for example, those that signed up for the Open, the entire population signed up for the Open. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be just more spots at the games. It could be more spots at semifinals or something like that. Just because it's virtual, what does it matter if it's 50 or whatever? Just listen to the Masters community because we are doing it as non-professionals because we love it. So I think that's a big takeaway.
We love it.
Keep wanting to hammer CrossFit to let them know, what our voices are.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll dig into more of that, some of those numbers, because I think there's some fun fodder there. With this in mind, I have a pick of the week that I'll start with, and that may allow you to brainstorm a pick of the week, or you may already have one. Okay, good. My pick of the week is it's an attachment to my ice barrel. All right. So the company Ice Barrel sent me a barrel 6 months ago, last summer. And I thought, man, how am I going to carry this around in my RV? It actually turns out to be incredibly usable for me. It's when I empty it, I can pick it up, put it in my RV. It travels with me. It's actually very helpful. But I do love cold plunges in the mornings. And if you followed my journey on this cold plunge, I'm on month 5. I think I've missed maybe 1 or 2 days where I haven't physically been able to get into the ice barrel. But I've always struggled with keeping that water cold. Whether it was when I was in Cookeville, when I was really getting into it, the cold temperatures at night kept the water very cold. So I was getting into some pretty cold water. And then as we traveled to Orlando and through Florida, the ambient temperatures were not conducive for keeping the water cold. So I had to buy a freezer, freeze water every day. I just knew there had to be a better solution. And someone recommended Penguin Coolers, which is an external industrial water cooler that attaches a hose to the drain in the ice barrel, runs through this cooler that's plugged into just a regular outlet, and then it outputs cold water up through a filter over the edge into the top of the barrel. So it creates this nice system to keep the water cold. And I reached out to them, and they sent me a unit to test out, and they were so generous. I mean, honestly, they gave me the unit to test out, and I was going to document it on my YouTube channel, and I plugged it in, and I was so excited that I couldn't wait to see this thing work. I got it during the Open when we were in New Orleans, and it was just going to make the water cold. And, I let that water run overnight, woke up the next morning, the water had not dropped 1 degree. And I was like, oh no, this is not good. I can't this is not good. So I thought, I'll just wait 1 more day. We'll see if it gets cold. It didn't change temperatures at all. Super concerned. And, so after a couple of weeks of just troubleshooting, trying to figure out, the company said, it sounds like the cooler's not working. And so they sent me a new one. And I just wanted to share that whole story because I really thought that this solution was just how am I going to recommend? This is a really nice device, and I can't recommend it. They sent me a new unit. The old unit was just not working. Something happened in shipping, so it was not working properly. The new unit, within an hour, it dropped the water temperature 10 degrees. Now, I keep that water set at 45 degrees, rain, shine, warm temperatures, cold. At 45 degrees, it holds that temperature, and it is amazing. So if you are an ice barrel user, there's multiple, this company has multiple coolers, but if you're an ice barrel user and you've been struggling to try to keep that water cold, whether you're buying bags of ice, I was freezing about 50 pounds of ice every day in order to keep this water cool. Penguin Coolers is the place to go, and I'll have a link in the show notes for you for this exact cooler. It is the most amazing thing of the week by far. I'll just say that, of the week. Maybe even of the month. That's great.
That is fantastic to hear, because we're coming out of the season where we didn't need here in Ohio anything to keep the water temperature colder than it already was. In fact, many mornings that the early crew would go out there and have to break the ice up in order to get into the ice barrels that we have at our affiliate. So, yep. But we're heading, turning the corner here in April, and it's going to get warmer. So that's something maybe we can investigate there. So I'm glad you found one that worked, and
it's amazing. It's unbelievable.
The lemon that they sent you the first time.
I sent it back.
Let their engineer tear it apart and go figure out what was wrong with it. My tip of the week is something that I have not purchased yet, but I'm really curious if anybody out there has. I have, for those that know me and our affiliate, I have probably the oldest weight vest that's been manufactured in the CrossFit space. I still has the individual sandbags on it. It looks like it's 20 years old. Damn near is. It's not really 20 years old, but it's old. I've been looking at new weight vests. I've never jumped into the 511 tactical vests that are so popular, but was investigating that Rogue plate carrier that they have. It's on their site, and it is designed by Dave Castro, something like that, and all the better fitting, less irritation around arms and sides, they say, than some of the others. It looks interesting enough that, coming into Murph season, last year didn't do Murph because semifinals was it was the week before semifinals, and I was not going to do that to myself, but I need to do Murph this year. I'm interested in it enough that I think I'm going to order one and order the plates. But I'm curious if somebody does have one from Rogue, what their thoughts are to it. Because I could read all the reviews, but from a listener, that carries a lot of weight as well. So I don't own it yet, but I'm getting close. So that's my tip of the week, or question of the week.
Man, I've had a couple of weight vests over the years, and the one I currently have is from Bear Complex, but the one I currently have is only 14 pounds. It's incredibly comfortable, but it's only 14 pounds. So I can't say anything about it because it's not to scale or to RX for men, but it's quite comfortable. But man, I love a good weight vest, so I'm curious to see the feedback that you get as well, because I, believe it or not, I still have leftover money from the Rogue gift card from the games this year, and I don't have a 20-pound weight vest. And again, I agree with you. I will be doing Memorial Day Murph. I didn't do it last year, and it's going to be on the topic for this. We were busy. Yeah, we were quite busy. So I had just finished semifinals on the Sunday, and the next day was Memorial Day Murph, so I took the day off. I'm not doing that. It's crazy. So, well, Rick, thank you for that recommendation, and I can't wait to hear the feedback that you get on that.
How about?
Yep, excellent. Well, guys, thank you for tuning in to the Masters in Motion podcast. If you found this episode helpful, we'd be so grateful if you could take a moment to leave us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app. Your support helps us reach more listeners and grow our Masters community. Until next time, get bolder, not older.